Verstappen sends a new warning to McLaren drivers after a dominant win. Hamilton is in serious trouble after disobeying team orders, and Lando makes a shocking admission for the championship. Do consider subbing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. When a Formula One championship leader crashes out of a race in the opening lap, you know something massive just shifted in the title fight. Oscar Piastri's nightmare weekend in Baku has just blown this championship race wide open, and the man everyone thought was out of contention is suddenly back in the conversation. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix was supposed to be another step toward Oscar Piastri securing his first world championship. Instead, it became the weekend that reminded everyone why you should never count out a three-time world champion named Max Verstappen. What happened in Baku wasn't just a bad weekend for Piastri. It was a complete unraveling that has fundamentally changed the dynamics of this title race. Let's break down exactly what went wrong for the championship leader. First, qualifying turned into a disaster when Piastri crashed, leaving him buried down in 9th place on the grid. Already, warning signs were flashing. This wasn't the composed, calculated Oscar Piastri we've grown accustomed to seeing dominate the season. Something felt different. Race day brought even more pain. A jump-start penalty added insult to injury, giving Piastri a 5-second time penalty before the real racing had even begun. But the fatal blow came when he lost control at turn 5 during the opening lap, sliding off track and ending his race before it truly started. Two critical errors in one weekend from a driver known for his ice-cold composure and mistake-free driving. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen was doing what Max Verstappen does best, turning what seemed impossible into reality. The Red Bull driver claimed victory in Baku, his second consecutive win, slashing Piastri's championship lead from what felt insurmountable to suddenly very manageable. We're talking about a gap that shrunk dramatically in just 2 races. The numbers tell a story that should terrify anyone in Piastri's position. Verstappen now trails by just 69 points. In Formula One terms, that's nothing. We've seen larger leads evaporate faster than you can say world championship. With multiple races still remaining this season, 69 points represents maybe 3 or 4 bad weekends for Piastri, or 3 or 4 brilliant weekends for Verstappen. But here's where it gets really interesting. When asked directly whether Verstappen posed a genuine title threat, Piastri didn't dismiss the possibility. His response was telling, he's not ruling Verstappen out of contention. That admission alone speaks volumes about how this weekend has shifted his perspective on the championship fight. Piastri's honest assessment of his Baku performance reveals something crucial about his mindset. He called it messy, admitting to simple errors throughout the weekend. But there's something almost more concerning in his explanation. He mentioned that this weekend felt like any other weekend mentally, meaning these weren't panic-induced mistakes or pressure-driven errors. They were simply inexplicable lapses in concentration and execution. The crash itself came down to a fundamental miscalculation. Piastri locked up the brakes, misjudging the grip level available. He acknowledged that dirty air from following another car probably contributed to the reduced grip, but he took full responsibility for not adjusting his approach accordingly. For a driver who's built his reputation on precision and adaptability, these kinds of basic errors are particularly alarming. What makes this championship swing even more dramatic is how McLaren's season-long dominance suddenly looks vulnerable. For months, it seemed inevitable that either Piastri or his teammate Lando Norris would claim the title. Their car had been consistently the fastest, their strategy had been sharp, and their execution had been nearly flawless. Baku shattered that illusion of invincibility. The silver lining for Piastri came from an unexpected source: his teammates' inability to capitalize. Norris managed only 6 points in Baku, failing to maximize the opportunity created by Piastri's retirement. In championship terms, this prevented a complete disaster for the Australian. Had Norris won while Piastri scored 0, the title picture would look entirely different right now. Verstappen's resurgence showcases exactly why he's considered one of the greatest drivers of his generation. Written off by many observers after a difficult middle portion of the season, he's methodically clawed his way back into contention. His back-to-back victories demonstrate that reports of Red Bull's competitive demise were greatly exaggerated. The psychological aspect of this championship battle cannot be understated. Piastri has experienced his first real adversity of the season, while Verstappen has tasted victory again after a drought. Momentum in Formula One is a powerful force, and right now it's flowing in the Dutchman's direction. The question becomes whether Piastri can respond to pressure, or if these cracks will continue to show. Looking ahead, every remaining race weekend carries amplified significance. Piastri needs to rediscover the form that built his championship lead, while Verstappen needs to maintain this newfound pace and consistency. The margin for error has shrunk dramatically for both drivers. Piastri's commitment to focusing on his own performance rather than worrying about Verstappen shows maturity, but it also reveals the pressure he's now under. He knows that returning to his previous level should be sufficient to secure the title, but that assumes he can actually return to that level. Baku proved that assumption isn't guaranteed. This championship fight just became exponentially more compelling. What looked like a foregone conclusion 3 days ago now appears genuinely uncertain. Verstappen has reminded everyone why you never count out a champion until the mathematics make it impossible. The title race is officially back on. What if I told you that just 3 months ago, Formula One experts were calling Max Verstappen's championship hopes impossible, that Red Bull themselves had practically given up on their 4-time world champion? Well, after his dominant victory in Baku, that impossible dream is suddenly looking very possible, and it's a masterclass in never giving up when everyone counts you out. Let me paint you the picture of how dramatically things have shifted. Back in July at the Austrian Grand Prix, Red Bull's own Helmut Marko was waving the white flag, calling Verstappen's title chances almost impossible. The gap seemed insurmountable, McLaren looked unstoppable, and even the most optimistic Red Bull fans were starting to accept that Max's incredible 4-championship streak was about to end. But here's where Verstappen shows us something truly special about elite athletes. When the world says impossible, champions hear opportunity. Fast forward to today, and that impossible task suddenly doesn't seem so impossible anymore. The gap that once stretched to over 100 points has now shrunk to 69 points behind Oscar Piastri, and with 7 races remaining, we're witnessing one of the most dramatic championship comebacks in recent Formula One history. What makes this story even more incredible is how Verstappen himself is handling the pressure. While everyone around him is starting to believe in miracles, Max remains ice cold in his approach. He's not getting carried away with hope or dreams. Instead, he's doing what true champions do, focusing on what he can control, race by race, point by point. His recent victory in Azerbaijan wasn't just another win. It was a statement. After struggling at tracks like Baku for most of his career, Verstappen delivered what he called his best weekend performance of the entire season. The way he managed the race was vintage Verstappen, disappearing from the television coverage because he was so far ahead, cruising to his 67th career victory, with the kind of authority that reminds everyone why he's won 4 championships in a row. But here's what's really fascinating about this comeback story. It's not just about Verstappen finding his form. It's about how quickly fortunes can change in Formula One. Just 2 races ago, that championship gap was 104 points. In just 2 weekends, Verstappen has closed it by 35 points. That's the kind of momentum swing that can completely transform a championship battle. The psychological aspect of this turnaround is equally compelling. Back-to-back victories in Italy and Azerbaijan haven't just boosted Red Bull's confidence, they've planted seeds of doubt in their competitors' minds. Even Piastri, the current championship leader, is now openly acknowledging that he won't rule Verstappen out for the rest of the season. When your biggest rival starts admitting you're a threat again, you know the momentum has truly shifted. What makes Verstappen's approach so effective is his refusal to get caught up in the championship mathematics. While fans and media are calculating points and scenarios, Max is maintaining his race-by-race mentality. This isn't just smart psychology, it's proven championship strategy. By focusing on maximizing performance in each individual race rather than getting overwhelmed by the bigger picture, he's able to deliver the consistency needed for a title charge. The technical improvements to the Red Bull car are equally crucial to this story. Verstappen has been vocal about how much better the RB21 has felt in recent races, particularly at tracks where Red Bull has historically struggled. When a 4-time world champion says his car feels the best it has all season, you know something significant has changed in their setup and development. But perhaps the most impressive aspect of this comeback isn't the speed or the wins, it's the mental fortitude. Think about the pressure Verstappen faced earlier this season. His championship streak was under serious threat, the car wasn't performing, and critics were questioning whether his dominance was coming to an end. Lesser drivers might have cracked under that pressure, but Verstappen used it as fuel. This situation also highlights one of Formula One's most compelling characteristics: how quickly everything can change. The sport has a way of humbling anyone who thinks they have it figured out. McLaren looked untouchable just a few weeks ago, but strategic errors and Verstappen's resurgence have completely changed the championship landscape. The numbers tell an incredible story of persistence and belief. From 104 points behind to 69 points behind in just 2 races, 7 rounds remaining, with plenty of points still available. Sprint races that could provide additional opportunities to close the gap. Suddenly, what seemed mathematically impossible is looking strategically achievable. As we head into the final stretch of the season, Verstappen has transformed from championship afterthought to genuine title contender. His approach remains unchanged, methodical, focused, and utterly determined. Whether he can complete this remarkable comeback remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. He's already proven that in Formula One, impossible is just another word for opportunity. What seemed impossible just 3 months ago now feels inevitable, and that's exactly how Max Verstappen likes it. What if I told you that one of Formula One's top drivers almost didn't make it to the starting line this weekend? And I'm not talking about a car problem or team drama. I'm talking about something that could happen to any of us on any given day. George Russell's performance at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix wasn't just impressive because he finished second. It was incredible because he nearly didn't race at all. Behind the scenes, Mercedes was scrambling with backup plans, and former champion Valtteri Bottas was literally on standby, ready to jump into the car at a moment's notice. This is a story about pushing through adversity, the razor-thin margins that separate success from failure in Formula One. And what happens when the human body becomes the biggest obstacle to victory? Let me paint you a picture of just how close we came to a completely different race weekend. It was Thursday when the first signs appeared. Russell was supposed to attend the mandatory media sessions that every driver participates in before a race weekend. Instead, Mercedes made a quiet announcement that their star driver would be skipping all media obligations due to illness. Now, in Formula One, drivers miss media sessions about as often as they miss actual races. Which is to say, almost never. These guys race through broken ribs, concussions, and injuries that would sideline most people for weeks. So, when a driver misses something as simple as talking to reporters, you know something serious is happening. What we didn't know at the time was just how serious things had gotten behind closed doors. Team principal Toto Wolff later revealed that Friday morning brought a moment of genuine uncertainty. Russell himself was expressing doubts about whether he could physically handle driving a Formula One car for over an hour at speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour. Think about that for a second. This is a professional athlete at the peak of his career, someone who's trained his entire life for these moments, and he's genuinely questioning whether his body can handle the demands of competition. That's when you know we're talking about something more than just feeling under the weather. The respiratory illness that had struck Russell wasn't just making him feel tired or congested. It was affecting his ability to breathe properly, which in a sport where drivers experience multiple G-forces and need to maintain absolute concentration for 90 minutes straight, becomes a serious safety concern. One moment of lightheadedness or difficulty breathing at 300 kilometers per hour could be catastrophic. This is where the story gets fascinating from a team management perspective. While Russell was battling his illness, Mercedes was quietly activating contingency plans that most fans never see. Valtteri Bottas, the Finnish driver who had been Russell's teammate for years before moving to other teams, was contacted and put on standby. Imagine being Bottas in that moment. You're no longer actively racing in Formula One, probably planning your weekend around completely different activities, and suddenly you get a call asking if you can jump into one of the fastest cars in the world with virtually no preparation. The logistics alone are mind-boggling. Getting him to Azerbaijan, ensuring his racing license and medical clearances were current, preparing a seat fitting, and briefing him on the car setup would have been a massive undertaking. But Russell, being the competitor he is, wasn't ready to give up. Friday brought slight improvements. He managed to participate in practice sessions, though you have to imagine every lap was a struggle. The physical demands of driving a Formula One car are often underestimated by casual fans. These machines pull drivers in multiple directions simultaneously, requiring core strength, neck muscles strong enough to support a helmet under extreme G-forces, and cardiovascular endurance that would challenge professional cyclists. Saturday's qualifying session became a true test of willpower over physical limitations. Russell managed to secure 5th place on the starting grid, a respectable position that kept him in contention for Sunday's race. But qualifying lasts about an hour, with breaks between sessions. The race would be a completely different challenge. Sunday arrived with Russell making what might have been the most important decision of his racing career. Despite still feeling the effects of his illness, he chose to race. What happened next was nothing short of masterful racecraft, combined with strategic brilliance. Rather than trying to fight his way through the field with aggressive overtaking moves that would have demanded peak physical performance, Russell and his team crafted a different approach. They focused on an overcut strategy, essentially staying out longer on their tires while other cars pitted for fresh rubber. This required incredible tire management skills and the ability to maintain consistent lap times while nursing rubber that was well past its optimal performance window. The strategy worked perfectly. When Russell finally made his pit stop, he emerged from the pits in 2nd place, having leapfrogged multiple competitors who had stopped earlier. From there, it became about maintaining position rather than attacking, playing to his strengths rather than exposing his physical limitations. Russell later admitted that if this had been Singapore, one of the most physically demanding races on the Formula One calendar with its combination of heat, humidity, and street circuit demands, he probably would have stepped aside on Friday. But Baku, while challenging in its own right, offered slightly more forgiving conditions. The performance raises fascinating questions about the mental side of motorsport. How much of racing success comes from pure physical ability versus strategic thinking and racecraft? Russell's 2nd place finish suggests that sometimes working smarter rather than harder can produce exceptional results. Team principal Wolff's post-race analysis revealed just how competitive Russell might have been under normal circumstances. Early data suggested that Mercedes was within 1/10 of a second of pole position pace, meaning Russell could potentially have challenged for the race win if he'd been at full health. This near-miss scenario also highlights the incredible depth and preparation that goes into modern Formula One operations. The fact that Mercedes could have Bottas ready to step in at short notice demonstrates the level of contingency planning that separates top teams from the rest of the field. For Bottas himself, this weekend served as a reminder of his continued relevance in Formula One circles. He's set to return to the grid in the upcoming season with the new Cadillac team, and being Mercedes' go-to replacement driver shows that his skills and experience remain highly valued. Russell's Azerbaijan Grand Prix performance will likely be remembered as one of the grittiest drives of the season. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest victories come not from perfect conditions, but from overcoming circumstances that seem designed to defeat you. Did Lewis Hamilton just ignore Ferrari team orders? The drama that unfolded at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix has the Formula One world talking, and Charles Leclerc's response is absolutely fascinating. What happened between these two Ferrari drivers could signal bigger problems ahead for the Scuderia. Let me paint you the picture of what went down in Baku. Ferrari was struggling all weekend, with both drivers well outside the points-paying positions they're accustomed to. Hamilton and Leclerc found themselves scrapping for measly 8th and 9th place finishes, which is honestly embarrassing for a team of Ferrari's caliber. But here's where it gets interesting. The Ferrari strategists decided to play their cards. They moved Hamilton ahead of Leclerc during the race, giving the 7-time world champion fresher rubber to attack the drivers ahead. The plan was simple. Let Hamilton have a go at the cars in front, and if he couldn't make progress, swap the positions back before the checkered flag. It's textbook team orders, the kind we see regularly in Formula One. Hamilton took his shot but couldn't make the move stick. The drivers ahead held their ground, leaving the British superstar with nothing to show for his fresher tires. This is where Ferrari's weekend went from disappointing to downright awkward. The team radioed Hamilton through race engineer Riccardo Adami, instructing him to give 8th place back to Leclerc before the finish line. Hamilton acknowledged the order, and as they approached the final sector, he did slow down. He moved off the racing line, checked his mirrors, and appeared to be following instructions. But when the timing screens lit up with the final results, Hamilton was still classified ahead of Leclerc by 0.4 of a second. Now here's what makes Charles Leclerc's reaction so compelling. The young Monegasque driver could have exploded with frustration. He could have thrown his teammate under the bus in front of the media. Instead, he delivered one of the most diplomatically savage responses I've heard in recent memory. Leclerc essentially said he doesn't care about fighting for 8th place because Ferrari was so pathetically slow all weekend. He made it crystal clear that arguing over these bottom-tier positions was beneath him and the team. But then came the kicker. He suggested that maybe the team rules weren't properly respected, leaving just enough ambiguity to make everyone wonder what really happened. What's brilliant about Leclerc's approach is how he managed to call out the situation without creating a massive controversy. He acknowledged there are established protocols within the team, hinted that those weren't followed correctly, but then immediately pivoted to the bigger picture. For him, the real issue isn't who finished 8th or 9th, it's why Ferrari was fighting for those positions in the first place. But here's the warning shot hidden in Leclerc's diplomatic response. He made it abundantly clear that if this situation happens again when they're fighting for podium positions or race wins, he expects things to work differently. Translation: I'll let this slide because the stakes were low, but don't test me when it matters. This incident reveals so much about the current dynamics at Ferrari. You have Hamilton, the veteran superstar who's used to being the #1 driver throughout his career. Then there's Leclerc, the homegrown talent who's been carrying Ferrari's hopes for years and isn't about to be pushed around by the new arrival, regardless of how many championships Hamilton has won. The temperature aspect Leclerc mentioned is fascinating too. Ferrari's struggles in cold conditions have been a recurring theme, and it explains why they looked so competitive in some races this season while being completely off the pace in others. When Leclerc talks about looking forward to Singapore's warmer conditions, he's essentially admitting that Ferrari's car has fundamental issues that make it wildly inconsistent depending on track temperature. What makes this situation even more intriguing is the timing. We're still relatively early in the Hamilton-Ferrari partnership, and these are the moments that define how teammates will work together going forward. Every team has internal agreements about how situations like this should be handled, and when those agreements break down, it creates tension that can poison a partnership. The fact that Hamilton appeared to try following the order, but still finished ahead, raises questions. Was it a genuine mistake in the heat of the moment? Was the instruction given too late? Or was there a deliberate decision to maintain position? Only the people inside those cockpits and on the pit wall know for sure. Ferrari's performance in Baku was a wake-up call. Both drivers qualified poorly, with Leclerc crashing in qualifying and Hamilton surprisingly eliminated in the second session. Their race day recovery was minimal, leaving them to fight over scraps while their rivals battled for meaningful points and podium positions. Looking ahead to Singapore, this incident becomes a footnote if Ferrari can return to their competitive form. But if they continue struggling, and if similar situations arise with more significant points at stake, Leclerc's measured response might not be so diplomatic next time. The young Ferrari driver has drawn a line in the sand while maintaining his professionalism, and that's perhaps the most telling aspect of this entire controversy. The relationship between Hamilton and Leclerc will define Ferrari's immediate future, and this Baku incident might just be the moment that established the rules of engagement between two champions who refuse to settle for mediocrity. Did Liam Lawson just deliver the most honest admission in Formula One this season? The young Kiwi driver shocked everyone with his brutal honesty after achieving his career-best fifth-place finish at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and what he revealed about his teammate battle will blow your mind. Picture this. You're racing wheel to wheel with some of the fastest drivers on the planet, defending your position against fresh tires and superior machinery. Yet you're mentally preparing for your opponent to demolish you. That's exactly the mindset Liam Lawson had during those nail-biting final laps in Baku, and his candid confession afterward shows just how much pressure these drivers face behind the scenes. The 23-year-old New Zealand driver found himself in an impossible situation during Sunday's race. Starting from the second row, Lawson had converted his qualifying performance into a dream scenario, running in 5th place with Yuki Tsunoda breathing down his neck. But here's where it gets interesting. Tsunoda wasn't just any competitor chasing him down. He was Lawson's Red Bull stablemate, armed with fresher medium compound tires while Lawson was struggling on the harder compound rubber. The psychological warfare began the moment Tsunoda exited the pit lane. Lawson knew exactly what was coming. Those medium tires were grippier, newer, and theoretically faster than his own aging hard compounds. In his mind, he was already calculating how quickly his advantage would evaporate. This wasn't just paranoia talking. This was tactical awareness at its finest. What happened next reveals the razor-thin margins that separate success from failure in modern Formula One. As Tsunoda emerged from his pit stop, Lawson made a crucial decision that would define his entire race. Using the temperature advantage of his already warm tires, He executed a brilliant overtake into turn 3, positioning himself ahead of his teammate before those fresh mediums could reach their optimal operating window. But Lawson's masterclass in race management was just beginning. He found himself in a defensive nightmare scenario, with not just Tsunoda hunting him down, but also Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, all within DRS range. 3 world-class drivers, all with superior tire strategies, all looking for the smallest mistake to capitalize on. The pressure was immense. Here's where Lawson's earlier lesson became crucial. Earlier in the race, he had made a critical error when Kimi Antonelli managed to pass him, and that mistake taught him everything he needed to know about energy management. He learned that battery deployment timing could make or break his defensive efforts, particularly on the pit straight, where DRS attacks were most likely to succeed. The Racing Bull's driver's admission after the race was refreshingly honest. He expected Tsunoda to catch him much faster than he actually did. This wasn't false modesty or media training. This was genuine surprise at his own defensive capabilities. Lawson had mentally prepared for a much tougher battle, anticipating that those fresh medium tires would give Tsunoda a significant pace advantage. But something interesting was happening that Lawson hadn't fully calculated. His car's performance in Sector 3, the technical final section of the Baku circuit, was exceptionally strong throughout the weekend. This became his secret weapon, allowing him to maintain crucial gaps where overtaking opportunities were limited. Every lap, he was gaining precious tenths in those corners, building just enough buffer to survive the DRS zones. The tire strategy battle revealed fascinating insights into modern Formula One racing. While Tsunoda had the theoretical advantage with his fresher rubber, Lawson was managing his energy deployment completely differently. He had learned from his earlier mistake with Antonelli, ensuring he never ran out of battery power when defending on the main straight. This tactical adjustment proved decisive in maintaining his position. Tsunoda's perspective added another layer to this compelling narrative. The Japanese driver felt that pit exit timing was absolutely crucial, believing that rejoining just 2 meters faster from the pit lane could have changed the entire outcome. This microscopic margin highlights how Formula One success often comes down to split-second decisions and millimeter-perfect execution. The broader implications of this battle extend far beyond a single race result. Both drivers are fighting for their Formula One futures, with Red Bull's senior team seats constantly under scrutiny. Lawson's ability to hold off a teammate with superior tire strategy sends a powerful message about his racecraft and mental strength under pressure. What makes this story truly compelling is Lawson's vulnerability in sharing his internal thought process. Most drivers would never admit to expecting their opponent to be faster, but this honesty reveals the constant self-doubt and tactical calculation that defines elite motorsport. He was simultaneously confident enough to defend aggressively, while humble enough to acknowledge his teammates' theoretical advantages. The race result represents more than just career best points for Lawson. It demonstrates tactical maturity, defensive brilliance, and the kind of pressure handling that separates promising young drivers from future champions. His ability to convert qualifying pace into race results while managing tire degradation and energy deployment suggest a complete driver development that Red Bull management will certainly notice. This Azerbaijan Grand Prix battle will be remembered not just for the positions gained, but for the brutal honesty that followed, proving that sometimes the most revealing victories happen inside a driver's head.